filibuster in the middle of the summer. She's had some success in fundraising, and I know there's some questions about that, but I think that any reading of the facts on her fundraising tells you that she's a serious candidate. The point is that I think these things are now being aired out in a way that by the time the people she needs to convince will be paying attention, this won't be so much of an issue by then. I think one thing that has happened over the past week for sure is that the people who are in Abbott's camp are that much more in Abbott's camp, and the people who are in Davis's camp are that much more in her camp. I think that what's gone on over the past week is a lot of partisan posturing. A lot of these things that we're talking about right now when it comes to her past don't have anything to do with my life. And as a voter in Texas, I would like for either of these folks to be talking about issues that matter in my life. And right now, we're not doing that. They'll do that later in the campaign.
And one of the things that I think is great is something we'll get to after a break that we come to in just a couple of seconds, and that's the reaction from something else which was released later in the week involving Abbott and Davis. But I would be remiss if I did not let, because he's chomping at the bit on this, if I didn't let Sean talk a little bit more about some stuff that he did some investigation on, and then we can kind of decide whether or not that really matters. Go ahead, Sean.
All right. Well, I think it matters. That's why I want to go through it. But just going through her history real quick, what Texas votes is they vote content of character. I really still think that. I really think they're one of the last states that it doesn't really matter, what you look like. It's the old cliche, but they vote content of character. And let's talk about Wendy Davis's character for just a second. According to that article produced by Wayne Slater, who was just, described as a not conservative or not Republican in any way, seems like he's pretty middle of the road, or at least he's slightly biased to the leftist side. According to, that article, she lied about her age. She was a little older when she broke up with her first husband, okay, but she lied about it, and that's where that problem stems from. But what happened after that, I think, is a lot more interesting. And I can say this because I've had experience with a succubus, but we'll get to that here in just a second.
So wait a minute, you hate women? Is that what you're saying?
No.
What does that mean? I'm sorry, I have an ex-wife, and I wouldn't call her that. What does that mean?
One who sucks the life out of you and then moves on. Would be my personal definition of that.
Wendy Davis is a succubus?
I personally do, and I'll make my case. Before we go here, you can send all hate tweets towards @MR Fopow, F-O-P-O-W. That's on Twitter.
MR Fopow.
Hey, believe me.
Not Instagram, on Twitter. Please send
not Instagram. Hey, no, by the way, Taylor, I'm sure I'll get some of those hate tweets too. I don't promise. Whatever.
If Scott, if no one else hate tweets you, I'll hate tweet you after.
Please do so. Well, please just make sure you do include my handle, because apparently your tweets get retweeted a million times. I need the exposure.
Oh yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Proceed, sir. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Starting early tonight. Okay. In 1996, she admitted she never would have been able to go to TCU if it wasn't for a man named Jeff Davis. That's her second husband. Okay. So what I thought was a little interesting about this is these days you all hear about older guys seeking out young girls. Bruno Mars has a song out called Young Girls, like he seeks them out. Okay. But I thought this was interesting because according to that article, she was the one who seeked out him. She actually had someone put in a good word for her. And her dad of all friggin' people to put in a good word for someone. And he thought, apparently he said he thought she was cute and he was a little flattered and he went to dinner with her. But according to that same article, when she wanted to run for city council, he was the one who put a lot of wind in her sails. He was the one who shopped her name around his network circle, probably got her connected to a few people. So I would think it's probably safe to say that he had a huge part, if not, he was a deciding factor why she was originally elected to city council. Then she said she never would have been able to go to Texas Christian University if it wasn't for him, because he paid for half her schooling, and then he even went on to pay for her degree at Harvard. And he had to take out a loan and cash his 401k in to do that. So it wasn't like he just let me write you a check out of my savings account to Harvard. The dude was making $100K a year. He still had to take out a loan and cash in his 401K. He did that for her, no problem. He just did it for her. The day after he made the final payment on that was when she takes off. What he says is the very next day, she just left. And he said they didn't have a fight. It wasn't like they had a knockdown, drag out about she showed up drunk and wrecked the car and they got in a fight about a kid or something like that. She just, you made the, and then just conveniently left. So I just think that, and then on top of that, if that's a content where it doesn't quite ruin it for you, then in their custody hearing, she says she just wanted the kids to stay with him because, quote, it's not a good time for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she says they had joint custody, by the way.
So
this is not a chocolate lab we're talking about here, where it's like, I don't have a big backyard, I just, he wouldn't have much room to run around. These are kids we're talking about here. And you know what? I just think that what we have here, when we're talking about Wendy Davis's character, is based off of the facts that are presented before me, is someone who's ambitious, but she's also a liar and a child abandoner. And if she'll abandon her kids, then I would think she'd abandon her voters, or her constituents, or her state. And I don't think that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, finish your thought, sir. Oh, Sean, finish your thought. You're on a roll there.
Is that the kind of person we want leading the brightest and best state in the nation? Does she really have something to offer the state? If she'll sell out her kids, do people really think that she won't sell out the principles she runs on, just like Barack Obama did?
Her ex and her children all support her run for governor. That's one point. That's one point to be made. I didn't interrupt you. Well, I started to, but then I didn't. And the other thing that I find really interesting is that, when a lot of parents split up. I mean, if we want to talk about personal lives, then let's do that. When a lot of parents split up, the children cannot say this. They cannot say that our parents maintain a collaborative relationship for the good of us. A lot of kids can't say that. But the children of Wendy Davis and Jeff Davis can say that because they do that. So to me, that sounds like even though they've had a past that may have been a little ugly at times, and I don't know anybody who went through a divorce and it wasn't ugly when they went through it, even though they did go through that, it sounds like they have a pretty healthy relationship today. You don't appreciate that, Sean?
I do appreciate that.
Well,
but
then
what?
Hang
on. I just think it's posturing. It's posturing. Hillary stood by Bill. I guarantee that I would still not want to be in the room anywhere near that when they go at their knockdown, drag-out fights. A lot of the, I still support this person to a certain degree is just posturing, and that's all I wanted to say.
Scott,
I thought. Sorry, Taylor, it's your show. I thought you might have a question. I think that. I just and I appreciate the back and forth here. I find it interesting that people have spent so much time on Wendy Davis's personal life, which, as I have said, is certainly fair game. I think anybody who runs for high office is going to be scrutinized in a certain way. But I wish that Sean or anybody else would spend just as much time as they've spent on Wendy Davis's divorce as they would spend maybe on trying to figure out whether or not Greg Abbott supports in-state tuition for undocumented immigrants. Sean, do you happen to know the answer for that?
I believe he does, doesn't he?
He won't say is the answer. He won't give an answer about that. And while we're sitting here talking about these personal details of a state senator's life, we have serious policy questions on the table in Texas that are not being discussed right now, and they're not even being put to the likely next governor of the state. I find that very interesting.
Yeah, and I will say this because I did, and this is a non-answer by Abbott, which was he supports the idea, but thinks there needs to be tweaks to the law.
Yeah, like
but
what?
He doesn't say what.
Exactly. He doesn't give any detail about that. I think there ought to be a reform to the law. Let me say this, and I know you're going to get to a little bit more on this later, Taylor, because you mentioned it to us before the show. But it seems like even when Greg Abbott is in the most friendly of territories, he was on Fox News, and he was asked questions about whether or not his campaign stands by the attacks on Wendy Davis, whether he stands by those attacks his campaign has made. He wouldn't even answer that.
Well, let's tell you what. Let's take a really quick break. and then we'll be right back. This is Saturday Night Cigar Lounge here on Vigilant Liberty Radio. Scott Braddock is my guest, as well as Sean Venkman. So we'll be right back right after this.
We want to welcome Michael Moore to Occupy Wall Street. I'm so impressed by what I'm seeing here.
How much of people's income do you, Michael Moore, want the government to confiscate?
Probably twice what we're paying right now.
It's not envy, it's war.
Where's the rage? Where's the uprising?
Storm the doors of the New York Stock Exchange.
It is a class war.
If the wealthy paid their fair share. For a documentary filmmaker, I do really well. I'm very blessed.
And the rich thought poverty was bad.
I do well.
They get rid of it.
What pure? There's nothing pure about capitalism.
And they know what's coming on Wall Street.
We're seeing the end of capitalism. And I say good riddance.
He is one of my favorite capitalists. Yeah, I want to give him a hug.
Back here on Saturday Night Cigar Lounge here on Vigilant Liberty Radio. Happy to have Sean Venkman and Scott Braddock here. And Scott, I wanted to actually answer something that you said, which was, I believe it was Abbott was asked about it and he wouldn't answer when it came to the attacks. This is what was said, and this actually partially had to do with the Battleground Texas stuff that came out from James O'Keefe, and we're going to touch on that just a little bit. But this is the question that he was asked by Megyn Kelly. Your office did come out with a statement suggesting that if she was going to mislead about her personal biography, what else will she mislead about? Do you stand behind that? Do you believe this is an issue or not? And this is what Abbott said. Well, it's going to be up to the voters to decide what issues are relevant and which issues are not. Which candidate can best represent them and their values in the future. And I think both my story, my history, and what I stand for and what I have done for Texans will help answer that question. Kelly's next statement. Okay, but respectfully, that sounds like a dodge. And I mean that respectfully, because you put out a statement and you went after her. And this is not before the Dallas Morning News article. It is after. And he said, if you can't trust her to be honest about her history, what else can you trust her to be honest about? What else does she misstate? Do you stand by that? Abbott. Well, again, those are going to be issues, Megan, that the voters of Texas just have to decide on their own.
God.
As they develop
Sean, you see where this is going.
Their own idea about the kind of person they want to govern the great state of Texas.
Come on. They want to make these attacks, and he doesn't want to stand by them. And by the way, with all this talk about whether or not somebody's saying, using the word stand or, you haven't walked a mile in my shoes, people have tried to say that whenever people say things like that, that somehow they're making fun of him for being in a wheelchair. Is nobody calling Megyn Kelly, is no one calling her insensitive because she asked Greg Abbott whether or not he would stand by those comments?
I can understand where people.
I think people are over the top with some of this.
And that's actually a fantastic segue, because one of the things that Eric Erickson from Red State decided to do was get a hold of the temporary restraining order and the divorce filings and everything that was put out when Wendy Davis divorced from Jeff Davis?
Yeah,
right?
Jeff Davis.
Jeff Davis?
Yep.
All right. And he was trying to make a big deal about it. And I just want to say this right now. Eric Erickson, shut up. Seriously, shut up.
Which part was he making a big deal about? That was
the divorce proceedings, and the fact that the kid said they wanted to stay with the dad. And I honestly, I don't care about that. That's not what I care about. I don't care about her past.
Sean cares.
I don't care.
Yeah, I do.
Very much. He does, yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Well, okay. when I say I don't care about her past, I mean the minutia.
What are the big issues you care about, Sean? I mean, as far as policy questions for Texas.
Well,
actually, the really ironic thing, kind of that